All right, good morning, everyone. So, if you're at home today, this is the video that you'll be watching. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about some string methods that are going to be really helpful and useful going forward. Now, again, you do get a Java quick reference guide on the exam, so some of these are on there, so you don't have to memorize them. Other ones, however, are not, but you can still use them. So, to get started here again, just like what we talked about yesterday while you guys were home, just in case, I'm going to create a string with a different name this time. We're going to say str, just because CodingBat uses that a lot, as well as the AP exam, equals hello. All right, so now I have a string that I have declared and initialized. And here we're just going to talk about some more helpful methods and what they do and how they can be helpful, right? So two of those, right, we start with str dot, and then we talked about this a little bit. We have last index of, there we go, that's a lowercase f. Let me fix that actually. Lowercase f. And this parameter is a string. And very similar to index of, this does exactly what you would think, right? Returns the index of the last occurrence. Of whatever your string is as the parameter, right? And again, if it's not there, it returns -1 if it is not a part of that string. All right, so this is really helpful if you're looking for something, right? The last incidence or the last occurrence of something in a word. You're looking for the last X or the last Y or something along those lines. This can be really, really helpful. Another one, we've talked about dot equals and how dot equals compares letter by letter, but there's also a dot equals ignore case. And again, the input here, or the parameter here, is a string. And this does, again, exactly what you think it would do. Now, this is a Boolean return, right? So this returns true if they're the same word, regardless of casing. So meaning, right, that capital versus lowercase here doesn't matter. Remember in Java that a capital H and a lowercase h, or for any letter for that matter, are treated differently, right? They're different letters. So if I just use dot equals, it would return false. If I use dot equals ignore case, that makes my life a little bit easier if casing is not important, right? Also notice for all of these, right, the first letter is going to be lowercase for the first word. Every subsequent one is capital, right? That's standard in Java throughout. And one more, or two more, I really should say, but they're kind of the same thing. If I have a string, I can do str dot to uppercase, and there's no parameter here, or str dot, you guessed it, to lowercase. Both of these do, again, exactly what you would think, right? This converts str to all uppercase letters. And this does the exact opposite, converts str to all lowercase letters. So these four methods are going to be really, really helpful in terms of helping us solve some problems, because they help us to take care of some issues, right? The two uppercase or two lowercase helps us deal with casing, as well as this dot equals ignore case. And last index of can be really, really helpful if you're looking for the last occurrence of a certain string. in a given word or sequence of characters, right? It could be a number as well. So what I figured I would do for the rest of this video, because today in class, and maybe tomorrow a little bit too for you guys, we're going to have what's called a lab day for part of class, meaning you're going to have some time to work through some problems and solve them and get an idea of what is, or not what is, but how to solve a problem, how to approach a problem, and work through the logic and potentially some of the difficulties you may have. So what I figured I would do here is figure out, go through a couple problems and talk through my ideas and my thought process, just to get you thinking potentially, or at least helpful to hear my thought process, so it kind of sparks some ideas in you. So one of the first ones I'm going to look at is this Bob there. Now, that's going to ask me to log in. We don't need to do that. But, so, if I look here, what am I trying to do, right? It says, return true if the given string contains a Bob string, where the middle O character can be any character at all. So, first thing I know here is that I'm going to, and here's my thought process, right? I know at the very end, I'm going to return false if I don't find it. So I know that's going to be my last statement, right? Now I'm going to write a loop that's going to go through the string and see if I can find that sequence of characters, right? So again, this is, I don't find it in my loop, right? I'm going to loop through the string, look character by character and say, hey, can I find this particular sequence of characters that I'm looking for? So I'm going to start here and say for int I equals 0, I is less than str.length, I++. Remember here, if I change this font size so it'll fit, right? I stands for the index in your string. It's really, really important, and I think a place where people struggle is, what does that loop variable represent? How is it helping me, right? And so right now, every time this loop runs, all it's doing is moving one character forward in the string, right? So when I is 0, I'm looking at the first letter. When I is 1, I'm now looking at the second letter. When I is 2, I'm going to be looking at the third letter, right? So really trying to conceptualize, how is this loop helping me? And what are these variables doing for me is really, really helpful, right? And so I'm going to use the inside of this loop to look for what I need, right? And now I'm only looking for a single character. So instead of using substring, I'm going to use character at, which we talked about yesterday. So if the current letter I'm looking at is B, right? Now notice all of these are lowercase. It doesn't say anything about casing, so I'm going to try it this way and see what happens. And str.character at I+2 equals B. Return true. So this is meaning I found my Bob string. Now, one thing I notice, right? I need to change part of my loop. Notice here, I have character at I+2. Well, if I go all the way to the end of the string, it's going to try and look for characters that are in places that don't exist. Like if I press go right now, you'll notice I get an out of bounds exception, right here on this one, because all of a sudden it's trying to find characters that don't exist, right? It's looking at an index that's beyond the end of my string. So just to fix that, I can change my loop here to be less than -2, and now I don't have to worry about running out of bounds, right? All of the previous ones, if I go back here, they were able to find the pattern before they got to the end of the word, right? Or they were unable to find the pattern. However, here, right, when it evaluates this first if I find the letter B, then I'm going to go look for another B. Well, if you notice, in this example right here where I got the issue, it finds the B at the last index and then is trying to look 2 letters later. But there's nothing there, So that's why I run into that problem. So here, if I just make sure this is -2, I make sure this index here, that I plus 2, doesn't run me out of bounds. So I hope that makes sense. At least my thought process here about what am I going to do to solve this problem, right? Where do I start? What are the things I need in order to help me get there? Because I think that's one of the biggest things is people will just run at a problem, but they won't think about, okay, what do I actually need in order to do this, right? Do I need to have an integer that's going to hold something? Do I need to have a Boolean that's going to change if I find something? So we're going to go through one more example. If you have questions about this one, please write them down. We can talk about them in class tomorrow. Perfect. Okay. So if I go back here to string 2, we're going to try with this XY balance, right? So if I click in here, we'll say that a string is XY balanced if for all X characters in the string, there exists a Y character somewhere later, right? So one Y can balance multiple X's. So the idea is, how do I find a Y, right? Or I need to make sure there's a Y after an X. So this is a great example. The first thing I think about, the last index of Y needs to be greater than the last index of X, right? I need to make sure there's a Y after an X. Because that idea that this one Y can balance multiple X's, as long as I have a Y at the end of the word, then it will balance the whole thing. So if we try that, let's say if str.lastIndex of Y greater than str.lastIndex of X, close, close, return true. Otherwise, return false. Now if I try that, okay. Now what I'm finding here is a couple of things. It works for most of them. But, and this is the key, when you have it work for most of them, but you have a few that don't work, I need to look at what is the difference here, right? So you notice the two where it fails don't have an X or a Y. So they're still technically balanced. So the thing I think about then is, well, wait a minute. If they're both not there, that means they're both equal to -1. So all I need to do is make sure that they exist, or at least that one of them exists in this particular case, right? So, and str.lastIndex of, now Y is the more important one here, right? Y is the one that does the balancing, so that's why I'm going to use last index of Y here, greater than -1, return true. Oh, sorry, not greater than -1. Not equal -1. Sorry, I don't want it to be -1. I want Y to be there. So I'm running into some problems here, right? So when I think about this, it needs to return true as long as that, instead of an and, I'm silly. Oh no, I'm making more mistakes. So the idea is you can see through this process, right? I'm trying a bunch of things. It's not really working super well, right? Because the idea is I'm running into the issues where this part is fine and good, but having that second statement isn't helping me. So what do I do, right? Because if neither of them are there, it needs to return true. So I could take care of this pretty easily and just say if str.lastIndex of Y not equal -1, or I should say equal -1, and str.lastIndex index of x equal -1, return true. And then it all works. The first thing I was trying to do was trying to find a really nice solution that's really, really short, right? Sometimes that's not possible. I could put all of this in one if statement because they both return true. I could put this condition and it with this condition, right? Or sorry, or it with that condition if they're both not there, or the index of y is greater than the last index of x, then return true, otherwise return false. So if I log in here, right, and we'll see what my solution was before, right, notice how I wrote a loop for this. And here's another solution that works. So notice there's multiple ways to do this, right? So the way that I did this before was I started, again, notice I started at the end of the word and worked my way backwards. So if I found a y, I iterated this count for y. If I found an x, but there was no y after it, right, because I started at the end of the word, right, if I found a y, this would iterate this integer, it would add to it. But for somehow, if I found an x, but there wasn't a y after it, I would return false. Otherwise, if I make it through the loop without an issue, return true. So I show you this for two reasons. One, to show you that there's multiple ways to solve a problem. One way I did it with a loop, one way I did it without a loop. Don't feel like you need to be locked into always writing a loop or always doing something this way, because I could have solved that whole problem with just a single if statement. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it has saved my solution, which is unfortunate. But again, this is just to model the problem solving process. So notice that I had some difficulty too, and this is a problem that I've solved before. That's normal. It's normal to look at something and not get it the first time. The idea is, though, look at where it didn't work and try and figure out what can I do to address that problem. So I hope this was helpful. I will see you all tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.